Do you find yourself scratching your head at times during the 2020 NFL Draft when some of these teams made some of their choices? Well, there are a few teams that made a few questionable choices. Which team do you think lost the NFL Draft? We're talking our biggest losers right now. What is going on, Headliner Nation? Jake, Fantasy Headliners. Hopefully everybody's doing well out there. And now the NFL Draft is over. And now that it is, we can kind of take a look back at it and find a few teams that really made us wonder what their plan was going into the NFL Draft. Now, I get it. There are a lot of fans of the teams that I'm going to name in this video. Just stay calm, bro. It's all right. It was the NFL Draft. It was different than most had expected. A virtual draft, something that a lot of people were new to. But there were some questionable picks, and I have reasons behind the teams that we chose. Don't worry, it's still early. I'm not saying your team is going to suck all year long. Their picks were just weird at times, and we're not going to waste a whole lot of time. We're going to get right into the video. I got 4 teams that I really think blew their opportunity here in the 2020 NFL Draft. First team was really not going to be a surprise to anybody, really, is it? It's a team that's had a lot of questionable draft picks in the past, and they did it again in 2020. It's the Chicago Bears, a team coming off an 8-8 record, third in the NFC North, a team that really needs help on the offensive line, right? They went out and they brought in Nick Foles. They have Mitch Trubisky. They're going to battle it out to see who sucks less. David Montgomery was underwhelming, to say the least, last year. They really need to try to protect these guys if they want to give themselves an opportunity to be consistent on offense. They ranked 29th in total offense in 2019 and didn't really do a whole lot to help themselves out here in the 2020 draft. A defense that's pretty solid overall, finished 9th in 2019. Now, they had no first round picks. Why, you asked? Well, that was a part of the Khalil Mack trade that brought him to Chicago. So you have to kind of account, for that a little bit. However, they also didn't have any third rounders or fourth rounders. They really needed to knock the second round out of the park to make up for that. And what did they do with the first pick in their second round? They took Cole Kmet, Notre Dame's tight end. Now, arguably the top tight end in the class on a lot of people's boards. The athletic ability is there for Cole Kmet. I like the prospect in Cole Kmet. What I don't like is now they have like 9 tight ends on the roster in Chicago. Do they realize these are football tight ends and not the other type of tight ends that a lot of people look for on the internet? It's puzzling to me. They could have gone with a Trayvon Diggs or a Christian Fulton, a defensive back right here at that spot that they took Cole Kmet. Now, just a few picks later, they did take Jalen Johnson, defensive back out of Utah. I like the prospect. A lot of people don't recognize the name. Why? He played at Utah. But the guy, he's a true ball player. He's a solid ball player. He's going to be fine in that secondary. A little bit not quite as polished as maybe a Diggs or a Fulton that they could have gotten with the 11th pick there in the second round. But it just puzzles me, right? So now we have no third rounders, no fourth rounders, and the offensive line is just whittling away at this point. I don't get it. They took an outside linebacker, Travis Gibson out of Tulsa, solid player. Kindle Vildor out of Georgia Southern, another defensive back. Don't really understand that selection. We went on to get Darnell Mooney, a wide receiver out of Tulane. I understand the need for wide receiver, but with as deep as this draft was, heck, they could have went with a Christian Fulton there in the first pick of the second, and then went with one of the top wide receivers still on the board in the second round, and really accomplished a little bit more. They did nothing to help out the offensive line until the 7th round of the draft. They basically took the leftovers at this point, and that really has me worried about the Chicago Bears going into 2020. Their biggest need, the offensive line, didn't really get addressed that much in the draft, and it has me worried here for the 2020 Bears. Now, next up is going to be the Green Bay Packers, and this draft for them had me scratching my head almost every single round. I mean, this is a team that finished 13-3, first in the NFC North just last season. We're looking for them to add some weapons for Aaron Rodgers, and they need some help on the offensive line, especially after losing Brian Bulaga. Now, there is a need for a tight end. Jimmy Graham is left. Not that Jimmy Graham really did a whole lot. They have a young tight end there already in Jay Sternberger, so it wasn't a huge need, just something to pay attention to around those middle rounds. I mean, it's a team that finished, dead center, right in the middle of the NFL in the offense and defense, finishing 18th overall in each of them. they had a good opportunity in this draft to do something. And in the first round, where they're supposed to get some weapons for Aaron Rodgers, they draft his replacement instead at some point, Jordan Love. Now, don't get me wrong. Love Jordan Love. Love the talent. It's a lot of love in one sentence. I get it. I understand. And I'm all about drafting the future, right? Aaron Rodgers is not getting any younger. They're going to need another option in the future. Jordan Love is a great pick. However, with the needs that they have, as close as they are, as good as they were just last year, he is not an immediate need, especially in the first round. We're trying to get weapons for Aaron Rodgers. This could have been a great time for them to take an offensive tackle, maybe like an Isaiah Wilson out of Georgia. I mean, they could have went with a T. Higgins, a Michael Pittman at wide receiver. It doesn't really matter. They could have found themselves something to make themselves a better team in 2020. But that's okay, right? They'll do better in the second round. They'll get somebody. They drafted A.J. Dillon, running back out of Boston College. Another guy who I really don't dislike. Solid talent. But the last time I checked, Aaron Jones and Jamal Williams did just fine in that backfield, right? For the most part, they carried that team for majority of the season. Now, they did address the offensive line in the 6th round where they took 3 straight offensive linemen. I like the prospects of those guys. John Runyon, Jake Hansen, Simon Stepaniak. I like those guys as prospects. Are they going to step right in 2020 and help Aaron Rodgers? No, probably not. They're going to take a little bit of time. More than likely, they'll be there to help protect Jordan Love when he takes over for Aaron Rodgers at some point in the future. I just don't understand what they did here. Their 3rd round pick, Josiah DeGuara out of Cincinnati, a tight end. I just mentioned they had Jay Sternberger, another young tight end. Why draft one in the 3rd round? Their first 3 picks overall, in my opinion, did not set them up for any type of success here in 2020. All 3 of those guys had me scratching my head, and it's one of the reasons I have them as one of the bigger losers here in the NFL draft. Now we're moving on to the Los Angeles Rams, and I mean, this team as a whole for the past couple years has had me scratching my head. Just a few short years ago, we were all talking about how great the Rams could be for a very long time, right? Their window was wide open. And then it literally closed the same exact year. I don't understand what's happening in LA. It's really just falling apart. Sean McVay was deemed one of the saviors in the NFL just a few years ago, and now everybody's scratching their head going, what's going on in Los Angeles? This is a team who finished 9-7 last year in an NFC West division, which, in case you haven't noticed, is very, very good, and it's only getting better. They really needed to help their offensive line here, some help at safety. Inside linebacker is definitely a place where they should have gone. A team who we know can, score points. Total offense finished 7th in 2019. Defense, they finished 13th overall. Now, they had no first-round picks, but they did have 2 second-round picks, and this draft was plenty deep enough for them to make some solid choices. In the first pick of their second round, they took Cam Akers. Now, they just took Darrell Henderson in the 3rd round last year. We know Todd Gurley is gone, but do they really not trust Darrell Henderson enough already that they had to go Cam Akers? Now, I like the prospect of Cam Akers, a solid running back who, behind a better offensive line, could really be productive. However, it's not a very solid offensive line, but that's okay. They'll snag somebody better, right? They'll go offensive lineman with their second pick, right? In the second round. No. They're going Van Jefferson, wide receiver out of Florida. I mean, they just traded Brandon Cooks, and I love Josh Reynolds, who they already have on that roster. I believe he would have filled in just fine. That is definitely not a need right then and there at that time, being that they went with Cam Akers early. Had they passed on Akers early, gone offensive line, and then really liked the prospect of a Van Jefferson, a few picks later, I get it. But you took a running back and a wide receiver on a team that finished 7th in total offense, and you didn't address the offensive line at all until your last pick of the 7th round. It just doesn't make a whole lot of sense for me. This is a team that really needs to help protect Jared Goff. At times, you can see it, right? It looks like he's never played football before. They need to protect him. They need to give him a solid run game behind the current offensive line. That's going to be a struggle here in 2020. I don't understand their first couple picks. Terrell Lewis out of Alabama, outside linebacker in the 3rd round, I don't dislike. Their 4th round pick, Bryson Hopkins, tight end, Purdue. Love the prospect of Bryson Hopkins. right? He's somebody who could definitely produce in this offense in the future, but they already have Tyler Higbee and Gerald Everett. Do they really need another tight end at that point when they hadn't really, addressed very many needs? Now, they did get their safeties with Terrell Burgess and Jordan Fuller in the 3rd and the 6th round. That will help in the secondary, but overall, too many things that LA did that had me scratching my head. Like I said, Cam Akers, a solid talent. I can't hate on that because he was still on the board for them, 20th pick in the 2nd round. But they just didn't address enough of their needs after that point for me to really bump them up higher on the list. I'm kind of worried about the 2019 Rams. It would not surprise me if this team finishes last in the NFC West here in 2020. All right, lastly, the one that's probably going to upset the most people, but just stay calm. It's okay. I just don't really like the overall draft of the Philadelphia Eagles, and I'm going to be completely honest. It really started in the 2nd round. I love Jalen Reagor in the 1st round, right? Carson Wentz needs weapons. He's got a bunch of weapons that can't stay healthy. Alshon Jeffrey, always hurt. Deshaun Jackson, always hurt. They brought in Marquise Goodwin. You know what? Dude can't stay on the field. They have J.J. Arcega-Whiteside that they drafted last year. I mean, there's a lot of question marks. Greg Ward was their top wide receiver at the end of 2019. So I love the addition of Jalen Reagor in the 1st, but after that, it really just went downhill, in my opinion. The 2nd round, they took Jalen Hurts. Why? I have no idea. They just gave Carson Wentz a butt-ton of money not that long ago. They owe him so much money every single year, they're not going to be able just to cut him, release him, trade him. Nobody's going to take on that contract. It is a lot of money that he just signed and just agreed to, and more than likely will be stuck there for the next 4 years. Well, Jalen Hurts going to get a 4-year rookie contract, so unless they're planning 4 years ahead, I don't understand why they did this in the 2nd round. I get it. At times, Carson Wentz has proven that he cannot stay healthy. They need that backup. They need that lightning rod like they had with Nick Foles when he'd lead them through playoff runs. But Jalen Hurts is going to take a little bit of time to develop in the system. He's not going to come in here in 2020 and start at quarterback. Now, if Wentz goes down, he's going to be thrown to the wolves. However, I really wish they would have paid more attention to the offensive line. It's an offensive line that just lost Jason Peters. Overall, a solid offensive line. The right side is great. They need somebody to protect the blind side now that Peters is gone. Didn't really address the tackle spot until the last pick in the 6th round for them. It's just a bunch of question marks. Davion Taylor, Colorado outside linebacker in the 3rd round. Don't dislike the talent. Think that they could have gotten something a little bit better. Even with the Hurts pick, they could have gone with like a Denzel Mims at that point. Heck, Josh Jones, tackle out of Houston. He was still on the board. Just a lot of things that I would have done differently had I been the Philadelphia Eagles. I think they kind of fell in love with the name value of Jalen Hurts with him being there at that point in the 2nd round. And they took a chance on it. Now, a lot of teams are going to take a chance, but if you're trying to win now, a team that is a playoff team, I don't feel that they use their picks wisely enough to make themselves any better, really, for 2020. And then last time I checked, that's the whole intention of the NFL draft, is to try to improve your team with new young talent. I really don't see that happening overall. Now, like I said, I love Jalen Reagor. I love the pick. He's going to step in and see a huge target share to begin with, and the kid can produce. I guarantee that. Overall, though, as a team, it still has me worried, and that's why they're on this list. I don't dislike a lot of the names here. They did, address some needs. I mean, they went John Hightower, another wide receiver, in the 5th round, but more than likely he'll be somebody who's buried on the depth chart. Kayvon Wallace, safety out of Clemson. That's a solid depth pick there for their secondary. Overall, they had a decent draft, but really the draft pick of Jalen Hurts threw the whole thing out of whack. They really could have had themselves a better overall draft had they just gone with an offensive lineman or something right there in the 2nd round. I don't like the reach on Jalen Hurts, and that's the reason why they're on this list. Now, do they remain atop the NFC East? It's going to be tough. It's going to be a lot better division this year, and it's going to be tough for them. I'm actually kind of rooting for the Eagles. I want to see Carson Wentz. I don't think he gets enough respect in the NFL for what he does. We actually just put a post up on Patreon. If you're a member of our Patreon, you saw it. Kind of giving reasons why don't forget about Carson Wentz. The guy still is an elite talent when he can stay on the field. So those are the 4 teams that I had here as draft day losers. Does that mean that their overall drafts were horrible? No. Don't, misinterpret my words here. It's just that they could have done better with the pieces that were on the board when they were drafted. I really believe that these teams had the opportunities to really improve in 2020, but I don't think they did themselves very many favors. That's the biggest issue here, and that's why they're included on this list. But I understand some of you out there are going to disagree with these picks. That's fine. Put it down below in the comment section who you feel should be on this list and give the reasons as to why. Don't just get butthurt and not leave a comment saying why. Let's discuss this. Let's go back and forth. Let's find out who really, maybe some of these players you think help their teams. Absolutely. It's all about the discussion. We want to be as interactive as possible. That's what this channel is all about. So leave those comments down below. If you could do me a favor, hit the like button. You're trying to grow the channel as much as we can. Fantasy football is right around the corner, and that's really where we ramp up our content solely, around fantasy football. We love fantasy football, and we dig deep into it, and that's what we're getting ready to do here. Our 2020 Fantasy Football Draft Guide will be on sale on our website, thefantasyheadliners.com. If you're interested in fantasy football, make sure you go check it out. It's almost 500 virtual pages of fantasy football bliss, and we're looking forward to releasing that here in just a few weeks. So make sure you go check that out. Greatly appreciate the support. Hopefully you all enjoyed the NFL draft, and we'll talk to you guys later.